Hello, everyone, and welcome to Harv's World for another episode of Pineapple Bay. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Michael Tomlinson, Logan Plays FN12, Derpy Chew Derp, Stephen Brand, and the very clever So Long to the channel. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for subscribing to Harv's World. I genuinely very much appreciate it. And as you can see, well, tropical paradises tend to get rain, and this one is this one's no different. Obviously, I've just spent the night in my aunt's house. Obviously, why else would I be walking out the front door, right? Right. And turns out her full name, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, her full name is Anne Bonnie Reed. And Anne Bonnie Reed, my aunt, was very much a genealogist, which is interesting. And she's got a very interesting name as well. We're going to get into all of that here in just a little bit. I'm just walking down. I got this field planted yesterday. And my cover crop, my oilseed radish, is already coming in, which is perfect. I needed it to come in as quickly as possible because I need to cultivate that right back into the soil and get some fertilizer on this field, which is the whole point of putting in the radish to begin with. And if this tractor ever finishes starting up, which it's not likely to do very quickly, I will get this field cultivated. I just won't do it very accurately. There we go. So as it turns out, Anne Bonnie Reed, my aunt Anne, has a very interesting name. And the reason her name is interesting is because it's made up of a couple different names from the history books. So, Mary Reed was an English woman from the 1700s or so. And Anne Bonny was another woman from the 1700s or so. And the interesting thing about these two women, very interesting thing about these two women, is that they were pirates. In fact, they're the only two female pirates that the history books really have recorded. And my aunt has done her research. She's got a whole family tree laid out. It's pretty impressive. There are some gaps in it. You know, when you start getting that back that far, it can be a bit of a challenge to get everything just right. But as it turns out, Anne Bonnie Reed is the descendant of one Mary Reed. Mary Reed being that female pirate. Now, what's interesting is that Mary Reed died in Jamaica, in prison no less, and she was pregnant at the time. Now, of course, my aunt isn't 300 or wasn't 300 years old, but she has lived her whole life in the Caribbean, and it seems that Mary Reed had her child in prison. She was pregnant when they captured her. Had her child in prison, and the child's name was Reed, of course, last name of Reed. And my aunt ended up being descended from that child born in prison to the pirate Mary Reed. And Mary Reed, as a pirate, had a really interesting life. I mean, kind of almost a sad life, in that she ended up turning to piracy. And the reasons that she turned to piracy are even a little bit sadder, but also, you know, how exciting are pirates? I find pirates to be pretty darn intriguing. So, Mary Reed was born illegitimately to a woman, and this woman ultimately had a son as well. I don't know his name, but the son, she knew who the parents were, and so basically she knew who the father was, and basically what ended up happening was either she got a divorce or something similar. Anyway, the Reed family, or it would be the Reed family. That family was paying her what in effect in our terms would be considered child support. And what ended up happening was the son died. Well, Mary's mother couldn't get along without the child support money. So, what she did, and these in-laws had never, or former in-laws, or whatever you want to call them, had never even seen their child, their grandchild. And of course, they'd never met Mary. So what ended up happening was Mary's mother, when the son died, made Mary dress up as a boy to pretend that she still had a son so that she could continue getting child support for the son. And Mary, in fact, got so used to dressing as a boy that she ended up taking on what in those days would be considered male jobs. And, in fact, enlisted in the military as a man. And supposedly she was a very brave fighter. Very brave fighter in the military. She hooked up with some dude, which had to be a little bit unusual. Some guy is suddenly attracted to his tent mate or whatever, and wondering about his own sexual preference, and then she comes out and says, "Oh wait, I'm a woman in disguise," and so anyway, yeah, he eventually found out. Man, I'm just making a right mess of this, aren't I? And they fought side by side. Ended up leaving the military together. She converted to a more female role, at least in dress. She started dressing as a woman. They got married. They bought an inn, and they ran that for some time in England. And then he dies. And without the husband, Mary has to find another way to make a living. Now, I don't know all the ins and outs of old British custom and why she couldn't make a go of the inn on her own in the 1700s, but for whatever reason, she ended up going back in the military, returning to dressing as a man, and ultimately ended up on a ship that was captured. And when that ship was captured, she was forced into piracy, and she was a very bold and brave pirate. Now, where does Anne Bonny come in? Well, during her tenure as a pirate, Mary Reed ended up being captured for the first time. Actually, no, that's not correct. I'm getting ahead of myself. At one point, the British granted clemency to pirates. They said, anybody who's willing to walk away from a life of piracy, we will pardon you. And this was because piracy was becoming a real problem child for a lot of governments. And it really started because of the governments, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But the crew that Mary was on decided to take the acceptance of clemency. They all went on shore. They all gave up the life of piracy. But then they ran out of money. As you can imagine, And the easiest way they knew to get money was to be pirates. So Mary went back to becoming a pirate. And one day, when the ship that she was on was captured by the pirate Jack Rackham, also known as Calico Jack Rackham. And so she joined Calico Jack's crew. And unbeknownst to her, there was another woman pirate on that crew known as Anne Bonny. But Anne Bonny was also dressing as a male. Now you can imagine, pirates aren't nice guys, so parading around the fact that you're a female for months on end on a ship with a whole bunch of men probably isn't the smartest move. But Anne Bonny was also Jack Rackham's lover. But because they were of kindred spirits, if you will, Anne Bonny and Mary Read formed a close relationship and ultimately divulged their secret to each other. They let each other know they were females. And they became such close friends at one point that Jack Rackham was considering killing Mary Read because he felt like Mary Read was coming on to his woman, if you will, getting a little too close. So this forced Anne Bonny to fill him in on the fact that Mary was also a woman. It is, however, suspected, I don't know that it's ever been proven, that Anne Bonny and Mary Read did have a relationship, but nobody knows for sure. But as it turns out, Mary ended up falling in love with one of the male members of the crew. Now, she may have had command of her own ship at this point. I don't know for sure. It's possible to be part of a pirate's crew but still have command of your own ship. Because, we always see pirates on a ship and they're sailing the seven seas and doing all that fun stuff that pirates do, plundering and pillaging and all of that stuff. But they often had small fleets. If they found a particularly nice ship that they could keep, they would just put a second crew on that ship and then use it as a fleet. So who knows what Mary was up to at this point, but she did fall in love with a man. And ultimately, once again, she was put in that position of having to divulge her secret. And she was a much fiercer, braver fighter than him. And she actually saved his life by, he got into a scuffle with another pirate, and they decided to have a duel. And Mary knew that this pirate was pretty rough action, so what she did was, a few hours before the duel was set for her beloved to fight this guy, she went to the guy and forced a duel of her own and ultimately killed him. So just a couple hours before he was set to duel her lover, she dueled him and kicked the crap out of him because she knew that her lover would have gotten killed by this guy if she didn't. So it's one tough lady right there, let me tell you. When she was finally captured, she and Anne Bonny were fighting side by side on deck against what I want to say was the British military, if I remember my history right here. And everyone else, all of the men, had run down into the ship's hold to hide. And they were furious. They were shooting their guns down into the hold, trying to taunt these men to get their butts up there and do some of the fighting. But ultimately, Anne Bonny and Mary Read were captured and sent to prison. And, that was no small thing for a pirate, because pirates were pretty much considered the scum of the earth, and it was instant death. But they both happened to be pregnant at the time, and because they are dealing with civilized nations, they held off their executions to deliver their babies. So Mary's baby was delivered in prison, and then she actually was not executed. She just died of illness, of some kind of bad fever. And this all happened in Jamaica. And that's the beginning of my Aunt Anne's genealogy. She dates back to pirates, and somebody in her family had been keeping up on this because her parents ultimately named her Anne Bonny Read. So there you have it. Now, moving right along, I found something very, very interesting in my aunt's belongings. Very interesting indeed. And this is it. Let me show you. This is an old recipe from probably the 1700s. What appears to be rum. Well, what else can it be? It says right at the top, Pirates Bay rum. Did a little digging myself on the internet, of course, and found out that Pineapple Bay was originally known as Pirates Bay. So, everyone, welcome to Pirates Bay. Now, what does this recipe say? It's actually pretty interesting. Almost a bit cliche if you think about it, but it says, and I quote directly, "For brewing yourself a keg, boil to the sky a huge cauldron of water. Throw in 500 sticks of the cane. Let her boil for a time, and let her come to a cool. Cold water goes in just now. Pitch in 2 handfuls of the yeast, mix her to the sky, dump her into kegs. No topping the kegs now. Put them in a dark place for 8 days. And next it goes on. You need to be boiling off the water and collecting the rum steam. Drink not the first collection of rum steam unless you want to be dead. Then, the rest of the rum steam goes into kegs. Seal the kegs nice and tight with wax or tar. Let them sit for no less than 6 turns of the moon. Then drink her to the sky, and be not allowing some scurvy dog to plunder your nectar nor turn it into grog." That's quite the recipe. But I think it pretty much boils down to, obviously, distilling. Gonna have to do some distilling. But the only ingredients I can see in there is water, what I assume has to be sugarcane, and yeast, and thyme. So that's pretty darn interesting. I love old recipes. And so we're going to find out. I'm thinking. Let me just say it. Let me just say that. I am thinking. And we all know how scary that can be. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to finish off this field We've chit-chatted just probably enough for the moment. You're probably sick of hearing me talk about pirates, but that's going to be the focus of this leg of the world tour. The Caribbean and pirates. Not the Johnny Depp Pirates of the Caribbean silliness. And don't get me wrong, I love Pirates of the Caribbean. It's good fun. But we're going to be talking about the real deal. The Captain Kidds and Blackbeards and Calico Jack Rackhams and all of those fun guys. So let me knock this out. Get some fertilizer in my ground here. And we'll see where we stand. I'll be back in a minute. I'm just about to finish up cultivating this field here. And for those of you who might be new to the game or have never tried this before, I'm going to check our map here really quickly, and I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. If you've never used oilseed radish before, you can see right here that it's unfertilized. And as we go across the field, cultivating this in is fertilizing the field. So when I talked about earlier, or in the last episode I believe, that having to use oilseed radish, we were taking a 20% hit in productivity. What that really means is we're adding a growth cycle, because we have to let the oilseed radish sprout. And because we have to let it sprout, it adds a 5th growth cycle to our harvest. So if you divide 100% by 5, well, that's 20%. We normally have 4 growth cycles. Putting in the oilseed radish adds 1 more, so that's a 20% hit. But every application of fertilizer increases our yield by 25%. So technically, we're still getting a 5% increase in yield by getting this one application of fertilizer in using oilseed. Not the optimal choice, but it's what we have for now. So until we can get something better, oilseed's going to be the way we have to go. What I'm more concerned about is how low my funds are, because this massive field, and all I've got are 2 little 4-meter seeders, and I want to get some oats working in here. But that means hiring people to do some of that work, because it takes a long, just getting the oilseed in took forever. So with that said, I think it's time to make a little bit of money. But I think I can do that now that the rain has finally stopped. It took most of the morning just to cultivate this field, and we're well into the afternoon at this point, but at least we'll be able to harvest now. Now I have taken the time to move the cotton harvester over to that cotton field, since we have it available. And yesterday I was checking out some of this equipment that we've got on the farm, and it's interesting. I think I figured out what that big yellow box is for. I think it's part of our cotton harvesting, because that John Deere cotton harvester is not like any I've ever seen before. So with that said, I've already got this hooked up and ready to go. We just need to get it down to the cotton field. And this lane here is a little bit narrow, so I hope this big yellow box will go through this gate, because the cotton harvester sure won't. I had to find a back route to get over there, which wasn't too hard, but This isn't exactly flat terrain here either. There we go, we got her out. So there's quite a bit of, I don't want to say mountainous, but extremely hilly. You can see it over there to the right. And so I had to come up the back road over there and bring the cotton harvester in past that mountain. That's neither here nor there. It's just a bit more of a challenge to get down to this field, so we'll make do with what we've got. That's what Harv does. We make do with what we've got. And I'm still thinking about that rum recipe. It's kind of stuck in my head right now. I do know one thing, though. Before the end of this day, something's going to happen. Here we go. Here's our cotton field. I think I will just pull this over to the side of the road here. Hopefully this will work. Okay. Yep. Looks like that's ready to go. So let's see what we can do about harvesting some cotton. I don't know what we're going to get off this. The field's not in great shape. And I'm a little bit curious because there we go. We lift our box open. Fire this bad boy up. I'm a little bit curious because this field was at 100% fertilization. And what's curious about that, frankly, there we go. I didn't think she was going to harvest for a second. That's better. I'm curious about how they got it there. I have a sneaking suspicion, but we'll see. We will see. This isn't too big a field. It's only 10 acres, so it's about a third, just under a third of the size of that other field. So this one won't be quite as bad. And it looks like we're getting a decent amount of cotton out of this thing. That's pretty cool. It's just throwing that loose cotton right back into the box here. Nice. Very cool. Watch where I'm going. Harv, watch where you're going. That's pretty slick. Pretty slick little vehicle. It's not quite as convenient as the cotton harvesters that make bales, but you may have already guessed, and I think I've guessed, how that's going to all work out. But we're going to see. And this only holds 4,000 liters of cotton. We don't get the big fancy schmancy tools here, but we get functional tools, and that's what's really important. And I was just considering running headland passes on this, but I'm almost half full already. So I think just doing a quick turnaround here is going to be the right way. It looks like I missed just a smidge right there, but that's alright. No biggie. I'll tell you what, one thing, this is going to take some getting used to, because the header on this, when I raise it to turn around, it doesn't lower very quickly. So I have to remember to wait until the header's back on the ground before I start my next row. And as always, it looks like a little bit of cleanup is going to be necessary by the time this is done. What I'm really holding out for is to see just how this whole thing is going to play out when I get full of cotton. Because I think it's going to be interesting. I do think it's going to be very interesting. Because if it does what I think it does, I've never seen anything like this before. So I'm genuinely intrigued. And of course, I'm sure this field will need to be plowed once it's done. And probably limed. And it's going to need oilseed radish in it before we can move on. Why? Just because. Because it's what we have to live with here in Pineapple Bay. Yeah, that header does lift and lower pretty slowly. Oh yeah, there's a huge pause before it starts to lower. And I'll show you what I mean, because I hit the control to lower that header, and then there was just maybe 2 or 3 seconds before it did anything, and then finally decided it wanted to drop down. So okay, we are fully loaded. Look at that box unfolding. That's interesting. That would be pipe out, right? That's a version of pipe out anyway, at least the cotton harvester version of pipe out. Oh, look at that. Outstanding. That's pretty slick. It's going to dump its cotton into this big yellow box. And my understanding is that said big yellow box will hold about 10,000. So, yep, that is definitely pipe out. Very cool. Okay, so away we go, cotton harvesting. I am going to knock this field out. You get to sit back and listen to some music and watch me run around like a chicken with my head cut off. We'll catch up in just a little bit. And that's the last of the cotton. Thank goodness. No, actually it's not bad. Not bad at all. Even 4,000 liters at a time. You can see I've got a few bales sitting out here. Gotta get my pipe out. This is interesting, actually. It's been kind of cool. It took some sorting, I'll be honest with you, because frankly, this baler can be just a little bit touchy, and that's what this big yellow box is ultimately, is just a cotton baler. And so as you probably have seen, we pull up next to it, unload our cotton into it. It's got a packer, if you will, a press that goes along, packs in the cotton, and turns it into a bale. You can see it running right there. Very cool. Okay, well, what I have discovered is, to my unfortunate frustration, is that this works just like any other baler apparently, and you can't unload it if it's not full to capacity. So I'm stuck with 6,000, almost 6,000 liters of cotton in the baler, and if I don't get more cotton, then I'm not going to be able to unload the rest of this. So that's kind of uncool. Not too pleased about that, even though this has a variable bale capacity. Now I'll tell you, I started trying to make 10,000 liter bales, and the first two were a struggle. Let me tell you, getting them out. Now if I was on a perfectly smooth surface, it might work with no problem, but on that rough terrain right next to the field, it did not like that at all. So trying to get those bales out was quite the horrific challenge, I gotta tell you. And now it won't unload the bale that I've got in here. So I'm not sure what we're gonna, I mean, obviously I've got the equipment, so replanting cotton is most likely in the cards anyway. That's the truth of it, but I didn't really want to have to wait to get my hands on all of my cotton because I need the money. Oh well, we'll make do, just like we always do. I'll just have extra cotton to sell next time around, right? Right. So at this point, it's an issue of getting those bales loaded up, and I think I've got an idea about that too. Well, I know I've got an idea about that too because that's my job. I need to know these things. Okay, well, we have discovered something very important right now. This thing will not handle a cotton bale. Look at that. Nope, not gonna do it. Will not do it. And that's just a crying shame. Truly a crying shame. So, we're gonna have to come up with another solution. I'm gonna have to come up with another solution to manage these cotton bales. That is not what I wanted. Not at all. So I reckon at this point, I'm going to have to make a trip down to the shop and see what, if anything, they've got that will sort this out for me. On the plus side, at least I know that they support the cotton industry around here, so hopefully we'll have a solution. Okay, so I called ahead, and as I suspected, well, as I knew, You know, they do subsidize or really focus on cotton to some degree, a big degree. And they were willing to rent me this here bale trailer, and it's actually wasn't that expensive, about, I don't know, $300 to lease this thing. So hopefully this will solve my cotton bale problem. Keep your fingers crossed. And I brought another way over. I just wanted to drive some of the back roads and see what else is out here on the island. I actually came across a piece of property that looks really interesting. Looks very interesting indeed. I hadn't noticed it before, but it's this right here on the right, because I came right up through, not here because that's kind of a driveway, but this place right here on the right. See that shed sitting there? And I came down this road. And what's interesting about it is it's got lots of open space on it. Keep that in mind for future reference. And if I forget about it, remind me, because it could be important. It might be important indeed. So it seems I should have taken a left turn at Albuquerque, because I really ended up kind of going the back way. Had to cross over a washed out riverbed. Oh well, I made it. That's all that matters. And we're going to find out if this thing will manage these bales or not, for the love of God. For the love of God and all that is holy. See if I can back this up right to it. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Almost got this. I'm going to tip our trailer down. Back it up to our bale. Oh, look at that. Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. That's what I needed to happen. Unfortunately, I can only move one at a time, but I'm not going to complain. The only downside is I've got to haul these all the way into town, because the two places that will buy them are effectively side by side. There's the import-export business down there, and there's a spinnery down there. So I've got to make 3 long trips all the way into town. As I keep saying, this is not a small place, so there's going to be a whole bunch of driving going on. I'll spend the rest of the afternoon driving cotton bales, but I don't have much choice. I need the money. I really need the money. So I'm going to haul some bales. And we'll check back in when these bad boys are sold off. This is the last bale of cotton. And, yeah. I have been doing some serious driving here, let me tell you. Although, I think I've managed to find a shortcut that I prefer. Keeps me off the highway, keeps me out of traffic, more importantly. Much more importantly, I might add. It's faster. Although, I gotta tell you, beware, because there are some rickety bridges around here. Very rickety bridges. In fact, there's one that I crossed over, and I want to stop and take a look at, because it was kind of freaking me out the last time I crossed over it. And the reason it was freaking me out is because I couldn't tell if it was swaying or not. I kind of think it was. But I'm going to stop and look at it here just a second and find out for sure. It might have been an optical illusion, but... Oh no, that bridge is moving. Look at that. I don't know about bridges that... I mean, I crossed it. Wow, that's just freaky. Huh. Okay. Well, we'll take it nice and slow. Nice and slow indeed. Wow. So right here is our spinnery. That will gladly take this wool off my, or this cotton off my hands. How much is this one going to be worth? Because it's only 8,000 liters instead of 10. There it goes. 16,960. So on the day, we've made about 69,000? No, 59,000. About 59,000 in cotton, and that was for a field that wasn't even fully taken care of. It was just loaded with weeds. So yeah, I'd say they subsidize their cotton industry here pretty well. You won't hear me complaining. Alright, I'm going to get this truck back up to the farm. Actually, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to drop off this trailer back at the shop because it's a lease. Although it wasn't very expensive. And I'll tell you what, at some point I'm going to check with them and probably see if I can't just buy it. I've got that cotton equipment, I might as well use it. Yeah, the shop was just right back here. And the drop-off point should be underneath this awning. Right about there. And of course this is where I would come if I wanted to... There we go. If I wanted to get some repairs done. That's something else to think about. I need to get some kind of maintenance facility on my farm. Yeah, that shortcut is way faster. Way faster. So I'll tell you, I've been thinking about this. And I keep calling this farm, you know, my aunt's farm, Aunt Anne's farm. But over the course of the day, well, past couple of days, doing all this work, bringing in a little money, it's time to start some ownership. Yes, indeedy. Ownership of the farm. And I, in a manner of speaking, am going to stake my claim. How am I going to do that, you might ask? Well, I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to plant my flag, and this is now Pirates Bay Farms. Pirates Bay Farms. And not only that, thinking about this all day while I'm working, I've got that recipe. My goal is to make Pirates Bay rum. the farm is going to be used to finance that goal. But yes, welcome to Pirates Bay Farm. I do appreciate you coming along for the ride. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. You might even want to hit that notify bell just to make sure that you don't miss an episode. And until next time, take care.